Hi, I'm Whitney with Brilliant People. We are a company focused on workplace culture through training that empowers you to be authentic and effective with your teammates. So, have you ever had that friend or coworker, family member, anybody in your life who just agreed with you on every front? I mean, who doesn't love to always be right? But really, it doesn't, eventually it doesn't feel good. It might feel good at first because you're thinking, man, they think I can do no wrong. But eventually we start to realize, they're agreeing with me and I know I'm not 100% right. And, on the flip side, for the person who's that agreeable one, sometimes they're agreeing, you might be agreeing because you just don't want to get into a debate, right? Or you might be agreeing because you really don't feel compelled. You don't feel strongly enough about the thing to actually have it turn into something that's way bigger. Well, today's quote really made me think about this. It's whatever you do in life, surround yourself with smart people who will argue with you. And I want to clarify that when we talk about smart people, I'm not talking about book smart. We are talking about people who understand themselves and who they are in the mix, and they understand who other people are. These are people that they've got good judgment and intuition around the dynamics of the team or the group, and they understand the impact of their words. So those are smart people who you want to surround yourself by, because those are the ones who might be willing to actually argue with you. And don't get me wrong, I am not saying that I want to fight. My husband laughs because he calls me Scrappy McNelson. If you know us, you know that that's how I'm listed in his phone. And he has occasionally sent my contact to to work people connections, and they're like, "Who's this Scrappy McNelson?" So he likes to tell people that I am Mexican and Irish. I get that on my mom and my dad, or from my mom and my dad, and so I come by it naturally. But I'm not talking about fighting here. What I'm talking about is having productive conflict. And we really like to say that productive conflict is that passionate, unfiltered debate that is really going to help us get to a place where we can be honest and open and transparent about how we feel about a particular thing without getting caught up in the drama and the politics of the debate, right? So right now, I think with our shelter in place directives and just the unknowns of what's happening in the quarantine, and whether or not we're going to go back to work in a couple weeks, whether or not the world is going to start functioning again as we need it to, tempers might be flaring. People are being pushed into a corner. There's stress. There's a lot of things that we are concerned about right now, rightly so. And in this time frame, while we are working from home, a lot of us working from home, when those tempers flare, it might be easy to hide behind the fact that we're at home, so we don't really have to deal with that person in person. Or, maybe we're jumping on Zoom calls every day with our team, but it's easy to not get into the nitty gritty when you're having to navigate these relationships in this new way. But I'm going to encourage you to kind of rethink this, because there is going to come a day, hopefully very soon, where we are getting back into our work normal, right? Where we are going to be back with those team members and those people that we have to connect with on the daily. And we kind of need to know how to navigate this thing called conflict. And in my opinion, it's not something that has to be negative. I believe that we won't grow when we're not pushed and stretched. And, I believe that there's something to be said for the person that does stretch you, that does make you think a little more deeply about the thing that you are working on, talking about, focused on. And again, whether that's at work or in your family, which we are having to cross those lines a lot right now with this work from home directive, I think that this is something that we have to consider. Um, you know, I also know that it sounds really great in theory. It's really easy for me to sit back and say, oh, yeah, let's go have some productive conflict. It's no big deal. We could be honest and transparent about how we feel about everything. Realizing that it's not easy, A, to be the one who's being transparent for fear of what the repercussions might be. And it's not easy being the one who might be more transparent because, like, I know I can blow people out of the water, right? I am so transparent sometimes. And I try to do it with all the love in my heart, but I can be way too transparent sometimes. And so there has to be this balance and there has to be a trust that we are both allowed on both sides of that fence to come to the table and say what we need to say. So I think that, I just want to share that for me, when I think through this idea, I recognize that when someone comes to me and they want to challenge something that I am saying or working on, I know that I'm going to grow because of that challenge. It might be hard in the moment, but I know ultimately it's something that's going to help me get to a better solution, think through that problem in a sort of fuller, more well-rounded way. And I think that's hugely important for all of us. So if you are that yes person who tends to agree and maybe just wants to go along to get along, I'm going to challenge you to try to give a little bit more, right? Try to put yourself out there a little bit more and say what you feel. We can all do that in a really good and respectful way. So I'm going to challenge you to really think about how you show up in that way and what that serves when you just agree to agree. And if you are the person that tends to, not run from an argument, like you tend to go full force into it, I'm going to challenge you to maybe share the floor, right? Maybe a lot of times you might think, well, I asked everybody what their opinion was and nobody said anything. Maybe you could ask it in a different way. Maybe you could genuinely try to draw out those other opinions. Because I think sometimes that's the problem, is that people don't feel, either they need a moment to process and they need to be able to come back, or they just don't feel in that moment they can really jump into that conversation. So give them a little bit of space, encourage that conversation. As I said, conflict doesn't have to be negative. So my challenge is that we all start thinking about this as more of a productive thing. We look at it as a way that we can be creative, we can be innovative, and maybe even transformative, because we are allowing all voices to be heard. And I think that's important, again, in the team, in your work environment, but also in your team at home. So I would love for you to share with us in the comments. Think about how you show up and think about how you might shift that just a little bit. And I think that the reality of it is your sharing might help somebody else. They might see that and recognize and think about the fact that, wow, maybe I could step up and be heard. Or maybe I need to step over to the side here and give someone else a chance to be heard. Hope that gives you something to think about. Come back and share it in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.